What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to another Week 6 preview and prediction. And how about this one? It's not very often we get a national title rematch in the regular season, the season after the two teams play in the national championship. But that's exactly what we're going to get in Seattle, Washington this weekend. And, a possible top 10 upset again? Well, we just previewed one with Missouri and Texas A&M. Let's preview this one now. The Michigan Wolverines go on the road, also their first road game of the season, and they get to go up against the Washington Huskies. We'll break down everything in the national title rematch right after I say thank you so much for all the love and support this channel has seen that I have seen either on YouTube, off of YouTube, really does mean a lot to me. How can you support me on YouTube? Well, you can literally interact with the channel any way you can. Biggest way, obviously, is if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am and you haven't hit the subscribe button, what are you doing? You better hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. And thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. But you can also like, you can comment, and you can share. And again, anything else you do to interact with the channel helps to support me and what I do here on YouTube. But if you would care to support me outside of YouTube, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much. But also, let me tell you how to do so. Go give me a follow on Twitter at TailgateNate29. I post things about articles I write, games I call, and just every other aspect of field work I do as a sports media student. I would really appreciate a follow over there if you would be so kind. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's a national title rematch in Seattle, Washington, and these are not two teams that look similar. For the most part, these are two teams that don't really look all that similar compared to what talent they fielded in the national title game. The schemes may be somewhat similar, but Washington's got a lot of new players and a new head coach. Michigan lost a lot of talent to the NFL and overall have just been kind of a shaky team so far this season. This is going to be a very interesting and fascinating one from Seattle. Now, let me tell you how we go ahead and break games down here. We are first going to dive on into some keys to the game when each team possesses the football. So we will first look at keys to the game when Michigan is on offense against Washington's defense, and then we'll flip it. We'll look at the Husky offense versus the Wolverine defense at the end of the video. I'll give you my final thoughts, how I think this game is going to play out, as well as a final score prediction here from this game. So without further ado, let's start previewing what happens when Michigan is on offense this year. And look, I'll just say it right out of my apologies for that stutter, right out of the gate. This is a one-dimensional offense. This is a Michigan offense that just has not been able to throw the ball at all so far this season. Through 5 games, they're not even averaging 120 passing yards per game. That is just probably one of the worst marks in the entire country as of right now. And they started out the season with Davis Warren. Turns out he threw way too many picks. So now you throw Alex Orji, who is definitely a much more athletic quarterback than what Davis Warren is, but he's also probably at the same time a much worse passer. Throughout the games that Alex Orji has played, he's only thrown the ball 36 times, completed 20 of them. That's just above 55% completion percentage, but only 133 yards. He's only got about 3.7 yards per pass attempt, probably right around 5 yards per completion there. 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. So sure, he's been a little bit better than Davis Warren in a lot of categories. This is just not a team that is throwing the football enough downfield to be able to really make a defense with their pass game. And you're probably going to need it here, or I should say you probably won't need it here in this one anyway, because this is the Washington pass defense that has been really, really good so far this season, averaging right around 128 passing yards allowed per game. This is the Michigan team that eventually is a run-only scheme going to work against Oregon. Probably not. Is a run-only scheme going to work against Ohio State? Probably not. It might not even work against Illinois or Indiana, who are 2 teams that have really surfaced as true threats to Michigan on this schedule. But this, even though it is a one-dimensional offense, even though it is a majority run the ball, ground and pound, control the clock offense, it is really, really hard to stop because a lot of the talent that they have there. Kalel Mullings has been absolutely fantastic this year, and right now is probably going to have a better season than what Donovan Edwards has. A lot of people thought Donovan Edwards was going to be the lead back this year. It's turned out to be Kalel Mullings. 77 carries, 540 yards, and 6 touchdowns so far for Mullings this season, right around 7 yards per carry for him. 59 carries, I should say, 258 yards and a couple touchdowns there for Donovan Edwards. Alex Orji has yet to get into the end zone as a rusher, but in 32 tries does have 113 rush yards. Haven't really seen him really break open games with his legs yet, although we do know that he has the ability to do so. Remember in this national championship game last year when J.J. McCarthy was at quarterback, they threw in Alex Orji in some wildcat packages, so you kind of knew that Alex Orji was going to run the ball when he was in this game. I think he even threw the ball once in the national title game as well. I probably definitely am wrong on that, but hey, this is a quarterback in Alex Orji that, again, has been a little bit more, I'm not necessarily going to say efficient because that wouldn't be accurate. He's been a little bit better in terms of touchdown to interception ratio when it comes to Davis Warren, and a little bit of a better decision maker overall, but the completion percentage is not as good as Davis Warren. The passing yards are definitely not as good as Davis Warren, even though the touchdown to interception ratio is, because the longest pass play Michigan has had this year has been 33 yards. The longest pass play it's been when Alex Orji has been at quarterback, 16 yards. That absolutely cannot continue. Alex Orji has to be able to find some sort of rhythm with the pass if he is going to be that quarterback for this team. And now look, the one-dimensional offense is really, really tough to stop, right? This is a rush game that is really hard to stop. Kalel Mullings, very physical. This is an offensive line that has been, for the most part, pretty darn good in run blocking. This Husky rush defense has to be tougher. It's allowed 121 rushing yards per game so far this season. And when you take a look at some of the games that has played and lost this season, most notably against Washington State and Rutgers, well, they allowed Rutgers to rush for 187 yards. Washington State, the other game they lost this year, they allowed the Cougars to rush for 136 yards. They mainly got beat through the air by John Mateer in that game, who has ended up being a pretty good quarterback for the Cougars bunch, but still 4.5 yards per carry for Washington State. And let me just go back to that game against Rutgers really, really fast there as well. Rutgers had 5.6 yards per carry. This is a Husky defense that's only allowing around 4.1 yards per play, but they've played Eastern Michigan, they've played Weber State. Numbers might be a little bit inflated in that regard, but for the Michigan Wolverines especially, offensive line play, you got to improve on that, especially in pass protection. The very, very few times that Michigan has gone back and sat in the pocket and really tried to air this football out, which, I mean, they don't really get that much downfield, but when they elect to sit back there and throw, which has been almost 100 less times, in fact, 82 to be exact. They've ran 108 pass plays this year, well, 115 if you count the times that they have been sacked, and maybe a little bit more when you consider quarterback scrambles, but whatever. A quarterback has thrown the ball 108 times for Michigan this year. They've ran the ball 190, and you have 7 sacks in there, which, I mean, the offensive line I think we knew wasn't going to be as good as last year. I think it's got to improve in the little things, but it is proven it is more physical. The biggest thing, though, for Michigan is limit the turnovers. You do have 10 turnovers on the season. Those have to be limited, and the reason I say offensive line has to improve on the little things, it's a Husky defensive front that has 12 sacks so far on the season. I've lingered on this one for a little too long now. You get the idea. Michigan continue to run the ball well, maybe get that pass game working a little bit more. In fact, you have to for some of your opponents later this season. Washington's got to step up in the physicality in that run defense. But when this Husky offense has the football, you take a look at the numbers there, and my question is this Husky offense potent enough? Now, obviously, you take a look at the stats in front of you, and they would tell you, well, yeah, absolutely. They haven't turned the football over. They have 7.2 yards per play. They're averaging almost 470 rush yards per game. And you take a look at the numbers and what Will Rogers, a Mississippi State transfer, has put up for Jed Fish's group, almost 1,400 yards, 1,354 yards, 10 touchdowns, no picks. He's only been sacked 6 times, and I say only, you'd like to clean that up on the offensive line just a little bit, especially against the Michigan pass rush. There we go. I knew I'd get there eventually. That has 13 sacks so far this season, but I don't ask, is this Husky offense potent enough in general? Is it going to be potent enough in this game to get by this Michigan defense? Because even though this is a secondary that has not been that great for Michigan so far this season, it is still forcing turnovers. I mean, you take a look at a lot of the talent that Michigan has in the secondary, and just based off of sheer raw talent, it has one of the best secondaries in the entire country. Makari Page is there. You got guys like Hill, guys like Johnson, guys like Moore. I mean, there are so many really, really good players here in this Michigan secondary. It just hasn't come together as a whole for them, and that's mainly because, well, I mean, they've faced some pretty good passing attacks so far this season. They faced Miller Moss at USC, pretty darn good passing attack. They faced Quinn Ewers with Texas, pretty darn good passing attack. So while the number may be a little bit inflated, absolutely, it's this defensive front, it's this rush defense that is the strength of Michigan football, and I don't think that is any mystery to say. The secondary has got to step up here, because there are going to be plenty of moments where Will Rogers is going to be able to attack this secondary, and he's going to be able to find success. I think it's what's going to keep Washington in this football game. And you even go back to some of Washington's losses this season. You go back and you look at that Rutgers game. I mean, Will Rogers had 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played well. Even the rush game played well. That's a game that you feel like you probably should have won, right? Well, the difference in that Rutgers game, when you look at the box score, 3rd downs. They got to get better there on 3rd downs. Got to clean up some penalty things as well. And speaking of that, that's exactly what plagued them in that game against Washington State. They only went 4 of 13 on 3rd downs, and they had 16 penalties, even though they didn't turn the football over once in that game. And in that game against Washington State, Will Rogers still had over 300 yards. Had 10 yards per pass attempt in that game. This is the Washington offense that has shown potency this year. It's shown the ability to get downfield. And with this Washington team, you take a look at a lot of the wide receivers that Will Rogers has to work with. I know they lost a ton of guys to the NFL from last year. There's still some really, really good talent here. How about a guy by the name of Giles Jackson, who very well might have been the most impressive receiver for him coming into this season? A sophomore in Denzel Boston has been ridiculously electric for this team. 30 catches, 412 yards, 7 touchdowns so far on the year. You got some other really good weapons I haven't mentioned, some really good players out of the tight end room that you can utilize, and even this rush game as well with Jonah Coleman, over 500 yards on the season, 4 rushing touchdowns, 7.2 yards per carry on 72 carries. This is a Washington team that has shown the explosiveness on offense. Again, are they going to be potent enough for this Michigan defense? I just reminded you of that question. I'll answer the question here in just a little bit. But I think one thing that sways the favor to Michigan just a little bit is this is a defensive front and a pass rush that is going to get home. I mean, you take a look at a lot of the biggest pieces there for Michigan on that defensive front. Obviously, Mason Graham, who's one of the best defensive linemen in all of college football. He's got 3 sacks this year. Josiah Stewart has 4 sacks this season, especially those 2 guys. You even throw in a guy like Ernest Hausman Barham, who doesn't have a sack this year but can get pressure, and a guy like Grant on the defensive front. This is a Michigan defensive front 6, front 7, whatever scheme they happen to play, that is really, really, really freaking good. And it is absolutely going to be a huge difference maker in this game, as Washington's offensive front nowhere near as good as it was last season. I asked the question again, as we tell you that this is the primetime Big Ten on NBC game at 7:30. It should be a fun one. Maybe a little surprising that Washington is the favorite here, but Michigan has played a lot of close games this year for the most part. Just hasn't really looked that great. Again, the one-dimensional offense, you couple that with the potency of this Husky team. This is such a tough one to predict. I really could swing either way with this one, but I am going to go with the team that I feel has the better defense and has the pieces necessary on defense to be able to slow down the opposing attack a little bit better, and I do feel like that is the Michigan Wolverines. This is going to be another tough, grinded-out game that I think Michigan is going to have to battle to win, and Washington's going to hit some shots downfield. They're going to get some points. I think this Michigan secondary will start to play a little bit better. The run defense and the pass rush will do its part, even though I still don't think Alex Orji is going to have a great day throwing the football. This also is a Michigan run game that's going to help Michigan control the clock, and Washington, can they clean up the penalty issue? That's one big concern for them. That has got to get better. I think Michigan, a grinded out win, maybe a last-second field goal, but the Wolverines will survive on the road in Seattle and win the national title rematch. Let me know what you guys think about this one, though. Really interesting contest in the comment section down below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder, and I'll see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.